Welcome to Eagle Spire Gaming, where we are building a budgeted 3,000 point list using the Solar Auxiliary Battle Group as our foundation. Today is June 21st, and I'm your host, Crown. We've got a lot of models to cover, so let's get started. The Solar Auxiliary Battle Group box has recently come out for pre-order, and as of currently is still available for purchase on the US website. With that in mind, I want to take it and use it to start our 3,000 point list and give ourselves a nice budgeted place to start the game from. So we're going to utilize every model on each purchase that we make. We don't want to leave anything behind on the table. That way we can make the most out of our money and not have to let things collect dust while they're not getting played with. We don't want to skew into anything. We want a nice balanced force to go from, something that later on we can say, hey, let's add more aircraft. Let's get an artillery company going. And I also want to keep the purchases down on this. Now, there's no need to focus on anything like efficiency for the detachments or the formations. We're just trying to keep to that first rule, put every model on the table. We're also going to pretend that we don't have a starters kit. I'll make a video for that later, but because it's got half a kit of Layman Russ and half a kit of Malcadors and one individual Warhound, if you split the box, it makes it for a completely different list that we would be trying to build. We're going to say that this was our first purchase. As you're going through this, you may be able to identify that some of these detachments and some of the upgrades to the formations don't have an additional cost if you were to move them from one spot to another. I've put them where I have because I wanted to have a higher model count in that formation or in that detachment, because I was going to have a legate commander there as opposed to a company commander. But you can play around with it as you see fit. Where possible, I went more for balanced, such as for my armored companies. But you can play around with these as you want to. Try things out, see how they work for your local meta. Looking at this battle group, we see that we have a good mix of infantry, support, heavy tanks, the super heavy tanks, regular tanks, and transport. With that auxiliary support box, we have 12 rapiers and 12 tarantulas. The most cost-efficient way to use these and use all of these is to put them into 2 units each of 6. That's 1 detachment with 1 upgrade, giving each of them up to that number. Your rapiers are going to have a split. I recommend 4 of 1 gun and 2 of an additional, and then those 2 extra guns being put into the other rapier unit. How you want to do those weapons is up to you. You could also just go with 2 of each gun in each rapier detachment. The tarantulas, you can have all 6 of the Hyperios or all 6 of the las cannons in an individual detachment, or you can mix and match them if you wanted to. That's up to you. So to get those 4 bastion units, detachments, you will need to either have an artillery company, or 2 artillery companies, 2 pioneer companies, or some combination of the 2. To get an artillery company, you would need to buy at least 2 of the Medusa and Basilisk batteries. And since I don't want to skew heavily into that, we're going to go instead with 2 pioneer companies. That means we're going to have to get more infantry. So let's get 2 more infantry boxes, and this will give us something to flesh out some sub-cohorts and give us more formations. We're also going to get a Malcador tank squadron. Using that and one of the super heavies, we are able to have a second armor company, and We will have a Medusa and Basilisk battery. I'm going with Basilisk because they cost more. And finally, we're going to have a squadron of Lightning Fighters, because one individual box comes with 510 points of fighters. We're going to need 2 extra auxiliaries in order to get to 3,000 points as I've used it. And thankfully, though we do have those models, they just come in the form of the 3rd auxiliary commander and tactical command base that we get from the 3rd Solar Auxiliary infantry box. We won't be needing those for this list, so you can divvy those models out from there and kind of proxy them into auxiliaries, or you can just leave them back at home if you want to use them. If you think that you might want to use them later, you'll just be 12 points down shy, which isn't that big, isn't that many points in a 3,000 point list. Our first formations are going to be the Pioneer companies. Our first one is going to be slightly bigger than the second, and again, you can play around with where you put some of these optional detachments so that you can make them bigger for breakpoints. But the first company is going to have the Legate Commander, and the second formation will have the Tactical Command. I've split the Rapier batteries and Tarantula batteries so that you have one of each in each formation. That way, the Tarantulas don't count for breakpoint for the morale. So I didn't want to have one formation heavily loaded up on that. It would reduce the numbers that it needs before you are broken and you are at that -1 for morale checks. And we don't want to do that. These are already going to be very forward deployed units because of the formation ability that they have, where everyone has forward deploy or infiltrate. These are close combat focused detachments, formations, and they're going to get up close quick. They're probably going to die quick too, but they're buying us time for the second wave to drive forward, and then the third wave to walk on to the objectives and hold down the battlefield. So that first formation is going to have an additional detachment of Ogryn, a Las Rifle Tertio with even more Ogryn in it. They can act independently, or they can stay with the group. The second company, we're doing the same thing, except we're going to have the Velataris Storm section in there, and that they will, instead of the Ogryn, both of these formations have a minimum size Sentinel unit to them, and which already have forward deploy, but we just needed to have a spot to put the two formations, the two detachments, where the sub cohort is going to have a large detachment of these. Next, we're going to have a tank company. As you can see, I've split the Lehman Russ into 2 squadrons of 4. We also have only one of our super heavies, the other one being needed for the second tank company. And this just allows us to have more, by having the second tank company, allows us to have more formations for deployment, allows us to spread out things. If I want to use one tank company to be very aggressive and forward, we're probably going to lose a lot more of those tanks very quickly. They'll break a lot sooner. The second company can be reserved and held back. You can mix and match these with the Malcadors. You can move the Basilisks to put them both into a single company. But as we're just starting off and playing this for the first time, just spread things out, see how you like it, do an after-action review of your models after the game, and see where do you want to put these in future games. Moving on to the sub-cohorts. That first sub-cohort is going to have the Legate Commander. We're going to put him in with a Las Rifle Tertio with 4 additional flamers. We've got a second Las Rifle Tertio with 2 additional flamers. This gives us a detachment of 6 which will fit into the Dracosan detachment of 3, which we are giving the Demolisher Cannon, reducing its transport capacity to 2 each. Those Demolisher Cannons, we can use those on buildings to try to break a building if it's garrisoned. Having 2 separate units of them, they can go off and do separate things. They can come together if you need the firepower of both. Maybe you don't need the second formation to destroy the building. It can fire at its own targets, or maybe you need that extra firepower to come together. This formation is going to be a little bit larger. We're going to have all 8 of our Sentinels into this one, and we're going to put 3 of the lightning fighters in here. They could be spread out, and we could put some of them into Pioneer companies. I like the idea of 3. I think it gives it a little bit more punch. Our second sub-cohort is going to be mostly the same, except it is not going to have the extra Sentinels. And our final formation in this list is going to be that tank company, 2 squadrons of 2 Malcadors, and another Basilisk battery. Now, for a bonus option, we could crush everything into the 2 Pioneer companies, 1 armored company, and 1 sub-cohort. And if you get rid of all of the dead weight on that, the extra commander, the tank commander, we save points by combining the 2 super heavies. We save points by combining the Malcadors and the Layman Russes. We save points by getting rid of the support slots and instead having the Ogryn and the extra Velatari as upgrades to our Las Rifle Tertios. If we do all of that, we will have 178 points left over. That's also if you get rid of the 2 extra Las Tertios from the commanders. It gives us enough points to get a pair of Marauder bombers with 8 points left over, or if you can decide where you want to get rid of 22 more points of your choice, perhaps 2 more Tertios or some Flamers. Maybe you want to get rid of some of the Cyclopses. That'll give us the 200 points that we need to get a pair of Stormhammers. Either one of those options, good point to go from to spread out to try some more firepower. If you do cut down on a few more points, you can recover some of those lost formations. They'll just be missing a few units, but if you're taking from infantry, you're not going to lose too much, but you will gain formations and activations, and those do have a power to their own. So tell me, what do you think about this list? Is this something you would consider buying, you would consider purchasing and building up towards, or do you already have something similar to this? Are you past this point? Let me know in the comments below. As always, this has been the Eagle Spire. I'm your host, Crown. Thanks for flying by.